Hello, everyone. Thank you for watching The Naturalist Capitalist. I am your host, Reed Coverdale, and I've got my friend Jeremy Todd on the show for the first time. How's it going, Jeremy?
Hey, what's up, everybody? It's going well. Thanks for having me, Reed.
Yeah, we've been trying to work it out for a little while here. Finally, got a moment we could get you on. So a lot of my followers probably don't know who you are on YouTube, but you and I talk all the time. We're collaborating, doing stuff on Twitter. We're on video chats. We're in Twitter chats all the time.
Yeah.
Just tell us who you are and how you came to Liberty. What's your journey?
Yeah, Twitter guy here. That's essentially what I am at the moment, but we'll change that over the next few years. So my journey to find Liberty. Well, originally I'm from Alabama. I have a background working in sales. I've been in kind of sales or sales training or sales management since I was 19. I'm currently 33. So originally from Alabama, currently live in Phoenix, Arizona. My Liberty journey, politically, I grew up in the South. I was an evangelical that moved from, kind of a Baptist upbringing, and basically voted for who I was told to vote for. And that was always religious Republicans like Mike Huckabee. And I even at one point supported in the state of Alabama Judge Roy Moore. He was the Ten Commandments guy, but then turned into a really, really, really gross authoritarian kind of dude. And so got the privilege to vote against him at one point. And then it all kind of happened over bar stools in the 2016 Republican primary. Being somebody who voted Republican, I kind of softened on that religious portion of it and became more of a, just a dyed in the wool, how would you call it? More of an establishment Republican type. I was a fan of Nikki Haley at the time when she was governor of South Carolina. I thought she handled the police shootings and the Charleston shootings very well. She took down the Confederate flag, which was pretty cool. And I was like, all right, this is my brand of Republican. And so it was Marco Rubio, and really had no idea about who Rand Paul was or any sort of libertarian existence, really. It was establishment Republicans. And me and the friends would discuss it and discuss it and discuss it. And we had this one friend who was like, y'all, Trump is going to do this. And we were all like, no way. The Republicans would never let that happen. We have too much character. We have too much, integrity. And we'd never let somebody like that come in and run this party. And then it happened. And I just remember feeling for the first time kind of politically homeless and expressing that disappointment. And on social media, a former coworker of mine, you can follow her now, it's Libby McKay, was working on the McAfee campaign and for the Libertarian Party. And so it was that John McAfee, Austin Peterson, Gary Johnson sort of engagement where I was exposed to Liberty and really, really started buying into that message from all of it. Oh, let's not forget Daryl Perry. I found out this week Daryl's an Alabama fan, so we're gonna be buds now, and licensed to operate your own toaster. God, what a great line. Anyways, so that was kind of how I got exposed to Liberty. I think Libby did a really great job for me of seeing that I was kind of coming from an establishment Republican place, and kind of helped, hey, have you followed this person? Or, hey, have you looked at this person? And so it kind of grew from there over the next 4 years. I didn't really get involved with the party. It was just kind of a fundamental belief system that I got to explore a little bit through Twitter. And so people would ask me this question, and I'd, for the first time in my life, say, well, my principle is this. Let me work to find my solution and belief system there. And it's really been a process of growing over the last 4 years from an establishment Republican type now into a dyed-in-the-wool, plain old, libertarian. And I believe in all of our party principles. I'm kind of I love the party. I don't think we do everything perfectly. I think it's a mess of cats from time to time, but ultimately at our core, we're trying to take down the duopoly, and that's the mission that I believe in. So, yeah, voted Gary in 2016, voted Joe in 2020, and here we are. Now we're involved on libertarian campaigns in both the state of Arizona, and today excited to join one in New York City. And yeah, that's my journey and how I got here.
Yeah, I think we have pretty similar backgrounds. I was a Mike Huckabee guy. I'm younger than you, but when I was in early high school, I was in late middle school, I was all about that kind of like hardcore Christian conservative thing. And then in 2012, when I was a senior in high school, Ron Paul sort of triggered something in me. He didn't draw me in because I wasn't paying attention super closely, but I remember in 2012, I was like, wow, if I could, I wasn't 18 by the time the primary came around, but I was like, wow, if I could vote for this guy, I would. And then Rand actually drew me in, which is ironic because he's turned out to be such a loser. But back then, like in 2014, he was great, when he was filibustering John Brennan and everything. And he actually like brought me in and pushed me away from that conservatism. And I think a lot of people are only trying to target the anti-establishment types. They're like, okay, like the progressives or the independents, they're the only ones we can turn into libertarians because they defy the narrative. That's bullshit. I mean, like I was, like
absolutely,
you can get everybody. I mean, I was terrible. I mean, I was, I voted for Mitt Romney in 2012.
John McCain.
Yeah, I mean, come on, like we can be right. Yeah, so I mean, I think it's good for people to realize that, and the same for the Democrats. Like I know people who voted for Hillary that became libertarians. It's not impossible, and I think people need to hear that more.
Absolutely, yeah. It's when they're, back to, and maybe this comes from our upbringing in the church, but our belief was always no one is too far away for us to reach, right? And that was always what we believed in the Christian church, right? Like nobody is too far removed to be saved or come back, right? Well, if you truly believe in the message of liberty, the core principles and things like that, and that they work and that they have appeal to the individual and the masses, well, then why would you exclude somebody, right? And I feel like we should be taking the message to everyone. Now, in marketing, when you have limited resources, obviously you're going to want to be smart about who and how you target. But on a one-on-one basis, it's absurd to go, oh, well, my friend's a Joe Biden neocon or neo-lib, whatever these denominations are, and say, well, there's just no hope for them. No, there is absolutely hope for them.
Yeah. So you brought up, we were both brought up in Christian families. You're still a religious person. I'm not anymore, but we both have the same background. And something that I was talking about on Twitter yesterday and today was the idea of denominations in the church and how that's just like the caucuses in the Libertarian Party. I have not joined a caucus, and I don't plan on it right now. I don't think I ever will, because I think they could be a tool for good, but right now I really think all they do is pull people apart. So for people who are watching who were not brought up in a religious household, you have the Mormons, who those would be like the libertarian socialists. They're the ones that, they're not, we don't really consider them Christians because they've got these weird views. And then the Baptists would be like the I guess the Mises caucus or something.
Yeah.
Then you've got the Catholics, maybe those are the Prags or something. And then
Yeah.
you've got the Pentecostals, they're the radicals, and like
Yeah.
all these
Absolutely.
all these different groups. What I found when I was a Christian was they were not working together for the same message. It was, this is the true message. That guy over there is, he's preaching satanic lies, like the devil, And I see that happening with the liberty movement, and that's why I'm a non-denominational libertarian, which
Absolutely.
is the same type of Christian I was non-denominational, because my family believed like, hey, we're all like on the same team here. We're all about Jesus, and and that's me for liberty. Like, I don't care if you're a paleo libertarian or a libertarian, as long as you're a libertarian, that's all I care about.
Yeah.
And just what have you had the same thoughts about caucuses? What do you think?
Yeah. So I have a great story and analogy on that. When I grew up in a very traditional Southern Baptist church, and the Southern Baptists are kind of like even more extreme than the Baptist, right? They're a little more, conservative. You do it this way. They focus a lot more on the religion, and the religious traditional aspects of it, rather than just the message. And I was finally, for the first time in my life, because I grew up in a kind of a small town, so we had some Methodists, and that was pretty close. And there's some Presbyterians, and that's pretty close, right? But there were no Pentecostals, non-denominationals, not in my town, right? So I finally, as like a senior in high school, going into my freshman year of college, was exposed to kind of a non-denominational, more Pentecostal approach to Christianity. It really resonated with me, and it actually turned into a really big revival in the city of Birmingham, where I was from. But there were some new things that involved kind of the Holy Spirit, right? That we didn't really talk about in the Baptist church because it was scary, right? And so I, in my own ignorance, was like coming back to a Southern Baptist church and going around the youth teaching people about the Holy Spirit. And let me tell you real quick, the elders in the church pulled my membership at the Southern Baptist Convention. They said I lost a grant. It was a tiny grant to go to a Southern Baptist college, which is what I was doing, right? And basically I was excommunicated from the Southern Baptist Church. And all over something that at best is, they can't, all they really want to do is, this isn't our priority, right? It's not that it's not something they believe. It's that it's not what they tend to focus on or value.
Right.
And in the Libertarian Party, that same sort of thing happens. It's like, okay, this person has this lane, and this is what they're passionate about. This is what they care about. Their principles are the same as you, right? And in the Christian church, the principle was Jesus. He came to earth, died for our sins. If you ask him for forgiveness, you get to go to heaven, right? That's the principle. Jesus can save you. Well, in the Libertarian Party, the principle is non-aggression, individual liberty. Okay, so then you have these, okay, well, if that's what my principle is, these are my values. These are the things that I tend to focus on and want to talk about. Some people, a big issue for them is individual property rights, guns, and, let's call it anti-war. But for some people, it's about culture and society and civil liberties, right? And what actually is going on is these people agree. They agree on most of these issues, like 99%. So they all come together and agree on this main sort of thing, but they'll say, oh, well, that group doesn't talk about this enough. Yeah. Like, okay, so that's not their focus. That's not their lane, right? And that is the most absurd part to me, is that just like when I was growing up and I wanted to start talking about the Holy Spirit, simply talking about something that wasn't the focus or lane of somebody was enough to get me rejected and excommunicated from a denomination. And when you have that sort of gatekeeping, when it's about, well, you don't talk about this enough, that becomes a real big issue, right? Rather than, okay, we have all of this in common. What do you believe, right? Do you believe what I believe? And what's funny is when these conversations between these caucuses happen, they believe the same damn thing. Like, they agree. And so it's just these are our focuses and priorities, and they fight over what the priorities are. It's absurd to me. I don't know.
No, I
Priorities should be the principles.
Yeah, I think you laid that out perfectly. It's a complete parallel that I kind of came up with yesterday, I guess, when I posted that. I hadn't thought of that before, but it just kind of clicked. I was like, wow, this is just exactly the same thing. So you've actually been really good at breaking down walls and building bridges. I think, even though I was the Liberty Uniter or whatever, that technically probably should have been your title. We were getting in the middle of these vicious firestorms that were going on Twitter, and we were like, okay, we've got one over here. Let's go, guys. Let's go spread peace here. And
yeah,
I think everyone in the group would definitely say you were the best. Like there would be someone just screaming and hurling insults, and you'd turn it around. So this comes to your. I wanted you to bring up the Carnegie Caucus idea you had, and the idea of selling libertarianism. The idea of selling a product that someone is maybe averse to initially. They've had a bad taste for it in the past, but telling them, no, look, this is really what we're selling. How have you been successful with that, and what is the Carnegie Caucus?
Yeah, so I'll start with kind of how that's successful and how that sort of plays out. And just in very simple terms, it really comes back to human psychology and a lot of the things that we don't get over social media, right? So when you have nonverbals, it's easier to express empathy with another human being. Because you get their tone of voice, you get their inflection, you get their body language, and you see that the way that they're saying it is as important as what they're saying. But in social media, you really only get what they're saying. And so what happens is somebody will say something, and then this other group or person that disagrees with them will come in and have no context, and they'll have their own sort of emotional perception of what that person said, and they feel attacked. And when we feel attacked as human beings, what happens, there's a part at the front of our brain that's our most highly developed and advanced part of our brain called our prefrontal cortex. It's where we handle logic, rationale, reasoning, decision making. It's where we learn to do really difficult things that have moved society forward, right? At the back of your brain is the part that developed early, and it was designed to keep you from being eaten by a tiger. So when you saw a threat, it pumped adrenaline through your body, sped up your heart, and prepared you to run or fight, right? And you hear it called the fight or flight mechanism a lot of times. It also regulates kind of your breathing and all of this other sort of stuff. Well, your brain only has the ability to utilize and it has finite resources. And so when we feel threatened or triggered, is a good word, all of our resources go to that back part of the brain. And what's interesting is that back part of the brain doesn't have the ability for language. We didn't develop language as a species until later. That's found in your midbrain and your side brain parts. And that's why when you get in a very angry fight, you can kind of only make noises. Or if you've ever been in a fist fight, you try to call them like a worthless bitch, and it comes out like, right? Like, it's because all of your resources are in one spot. So the rest of your brain kind of shuts down. And that's not good for connecting conversations, resolutions, or creating any sort of bridges, right? So it's only after we give that that initial reaction, that pump, like, so we're scrolling down our timeline and we see something and it hits us in our gut and we're angry or triggered or whatever it is. We need to give that a minute, right? And then take a step back and ask, okay, how can I assume positive intent from this person, right? In the best case circumstances, what is this person trying to say? And then respond from there, not with a criticism or a reaction, but rather with curiosity. Hey, I was curious. Can you expand a little more on that? Tell me more of what you mean. Why is that the case, right? I've felt differently. Explain your perspective, right? We need to, so first step, calm the F down, right? And don't respond while you're triggered and assume positive intent. And then from assuming positive intent, your second step is approach people that you might disagree with curiosity. That's how you disengage. And it was really interesting to watch that happen. And basically that's all I did is I told him, I was like, give them a second. From an outsider's perspective, you're perceiving it this way. They're trying to say it this way, and you guys aren't connecting because this is a piss poor medium for human interaction. Right. And so you're trying to solve higher level problems with words when words aren't going to do it justice. So give it a minute and and then you can start. Then all I did was start engaging them with curiosity to diffuse them. Hey, person X, you said this. Can you elaborate on that for us and explain your position, right? And they'd be happy to. And then person Y, I'd go, okay, it sounds like all the things you just chirped about, they weren't saying at all. Do you see that now? Yes, great. Okay, right? And like people can kind of just then let it go. And then over and over of doing this, right? And as we practice this more and more, we tend to then come across something and go, okay, I need to not respond, or I need to give that a moment. And that's essentially the process. Is we need to do a lot more thinking with our second emotion rather than our first emotion, because our first emotion is often incorrect. It's Twitter, it's Facebook, it's social media. If nobody's coming at you with a knife or a gun or threatening you directly in that immediate moment, take a second, right? Like that's what that first emotion is created to do, is protect you and your life and survival, right? This is not survival, all right? This is human interaction and conversation. So that would be the first thing. And then you mentioned about the Carnegie Caucus. So along the lines of a lot of this divisiveness that I see with libertarians, a lot of it stems back to these old white authors and economists that said some shit back in the day, right? That may not be applicable today. And so along those lines, what I started learning as I got really engaged in libertarians and the liberty movement is that everybody was reading all of these economists, and not only reading it, man, like I could quote the Bible as a kid, they could quote these freaking economists, right? It was a religious following of these authors, and I didn't get it. And then you would watch them interact and you'd go, man, these people haven't been to they've never worked customer service in their life, right? Like they've never had to be kind to it. How did they miss this skill set that comes to most of us when we work our first job, right? And it was mind-boggling to me that somehow this entire group of individualists have gotten here without any people training. And so Dale Carnegie was the author of How to Win Friends and Influence People. And when we think about what the next steps of the Libertarian Party need to look like, that's an effective approach. We need to win, how to win friends and influence people, right? People gotta like us. We aren't likable as libertarians. We kind of suck, right? To talk to. People avoid us. People block us, and there's a reason, and that's a problem. We need them to like us, and we want to influence them. And we weren't making any effective attempts at persuasion or influence with each other, much less the people we disagree with. And so what it ends up with is us at 1% over and over and over and over again, us losing ballot access, us, losing ground in every party and getting outcast in every way, and all of the things and principles that we stand for. That is a powerful message at its core that can win somebody over, win anybody over, that most people believe they're actively avoiding us because of how bad we are communicating the perfect message, right? Like, this is we are right. I was at the Arizona Libertarian Convention, and one of our guest speakers was like, we as libertarians have the benefit that we know we're right. We are correct on the issues. We don't, there is, like, we know we're right. This is the correct message, and we are screwing it up. Right. Now, that's not a personality deficiency. That's not an individual problem. That's a skill, right? Like, just like learning how to code, learning how to do graphic design, learning how to shoot a rifle and clean it and be a gun nerd, right? All of those things are skills that require training. And there was no skills and no training and no development that I could find within, liberty movement that focused on making the individuals of this movement smarter, better communicators, and, effective at persuading others. And so I was like, well, let's go. And so I looked to the first book that got me excited about personal development, and that was How to Win Friends and Influence People. And I said, let's do a caucus. There's got to be salespeople out there. And we avoid libertarian circles because we feel like we're surrounded by professional introverts. And instead, what we need to be doing is converting those professional introverts into effective conversationalists and persuaders, so that those dinner table conversations they have with their friends and family end with more people supporting liberty than less, which is what's happening now. So that's the mission and the goal of the Carnegie Caucus. Ultimately, we're going to bring together like-minded people that are experts in communication, sales, persuasion, and we're going to bring in a lot of outside guest speakers from the business world, from the personal growth and development world that we have connections with, and they're just going to help us become better people. And when we become better, more effective people, the rest the message of liberty will then take care of itself.
Well, I might not be a non-denominational libertarian forever, because the Carnegie Caucus sounds pretty good. And there's another caucus that can definitely bring people together that anyone who, well, maybe not anyone, a lot of people who follow you would know about it. But you want to tell us about the Wood Chipper Caucus?
Yeah. So one of the things, and here's what happened. I started this one first, and I can give you the backstory on it. It's kind of funny. It was a little tongue-in-cheek at first, but then I was like, wow, I've never seen more people like get on board and support one another as we do on this. Obviously, the notion exists out there for some reason that we somehow condone or turn a blind eye to abuse of children, and I was kind of tired of hearing it. And so when it came up in social media debates, I said, you know what? I Googled what does it take to create a caucus, and I was like, oh, a social media account, because there are, hundreds of them, whatever. Right. And so I was like, all right, let me start this. And so I started the Wood Chipper Caucus, the Libertarian Party Wood Chipper Caucus. And really what it was a way for people who get in these engagements, and people use that straw man of like, oh, well, you turn a blind eye to pedophilia or whatever, right? They could point and go, actually, quite the opposite. And so I did actually write a platform for it, which was kind of cool. And it just stems from the fact that I don't believe there's any such thing as victimless pedophilia, especially in somebody who's open about it. You have these people now trying to rebrand it as a map. And then there's no contact maps who are like, what, am I guilty of a thought crime? Okay, well, how do you come up with the thoughts? Right? The thoughts stem from somewhere, and abuse of children is never okay in any extent. Talk to any female out there who's been objectified over and over and over again. So even just looking at children sexually in that way is kind of enough to victimize a child, in my opinion. It will screw with their growth, development, and psychology. And so just believing that they're attractive in that way is enough to make you guilty of harming a child, in my opinion. And so then it was like, okay, I can't actually go out and advocate that, you know, people initiate violence and kind of put people in wood chippers as much as we would like to. So I made it the mission that we would teach people about jury nullification. If you don't know, there is a fun little loophole in jury law that if you're in a criminal case and the person is in fact guilty, but you believe it is an unjust application of the law, you can actually vote not guilty. And they will be found not guilty. And so I thought, well, if somebody defends their child from somebody who would seek to abuse them and catches a murder charge, we need to let that jury know. We need to taint that jury with jury nullification because that is an unjust application of that law. It's self-defense to protect a child because they can't protect themselves. And so, anyways, we had a little fun with it, and it grew. And then I decided around the new year that I did not like. It was tough dealing with what people sent me every day and seeing kind of the kind of disgusting stuff out there. And so I have now passed it along to somebody who will do a great job with it while I focus on the personal growth and development side of things with the Carnegie Caucus. But at Steve Remus at Remus LP, Steve Remus, running for state congressional here in Arizona, is now in charge of it and made T-shirts day one. So that's pretty awesome. So on Wednesdays we wear wood chippers.
So is the mannequin thing going to happen at fundraising events? Or?
Look, I will say this. So Steve drives a Hellcat, and he was investigating how to put a towing package on his Hellcat. So I'm gonna have to kick that one to Steve, how they do their fundraising. I just know that if he needs some money to help buy a wood chipper, I will absolutely do it. Or maybe we rent a wood chipper. I'm pretty sure those exist at like equipment rental places. So yeah, why not? Let's do it.
Well, I fully endorse both of those caucuses. Like I said, I might not be non-denominational forever. I can let it slide for those two causes.
I appreciate it. And look, you know, wood chippers was tongue in cheek, and obviously I'd love to see Steve run with it and bring attention to that so that people lose that straw man. I think ultimately that's one of the goals, but it's a great opportunity to do child advocacy with that too. But the Carnegie Caucus, man, look, if it just stays me, I'm not mad because I don't like. This is the way that the caucuses should work, in my opinion, is that they have a mission and a purpose, right? And that mission and purpose doesn't have to be to have more people to outvote this caucus, right? And I know that's kind of what the caucus was designed to do, but what I really want to do with Carnegie is be involved with all of these caucuses. Right. I want the members of Mises and Prags and Radicals and Outrights. I want everyone within this party to become sharper, better communicators, and more persuasive with their ideas, right? And so if it just remains just me, I'm fine with that. Membership is not a token I am excited about with the caucus, right? It's more of, you know, bringing in that culture. And if some people want to join me in that process, or they have those connections, or they feel like, hey, I love sales, I love persuasion, I love human psychology. In fact, I'm a life coach. I do, you know, this. By all means, I'd love to team up with them. But that's our mission. Isn't to create a voter base that outweighs another voter base in the caucuses. It's really to help all the other caucuses become the best version of themselves.
Yeah, so I'm actually optimistic, and I wasn't until January 1st. I was really mad at how the election turned out.
Yeah.
Um, I didn't expect her to win, Joe to win, obviously, but I was mad that there was such low voter turnout for libertarians everywhere, not just her, but all
Yeah.
across the country. And I was mad that so many incumbents got reelected. I would have been like at least elect the Democrat if you've had a Republican the last 4 years, or
Yeah.
vice versa. And I was really depressed, and I was kind of thinking about ditching the Libertarian Party because I had witnessed the Gary Johnson Bill Weld campaign that, when I first found out about it, it was like, whoa, 12%, like we could get into the
Yeah.
debate. And then
Yeah.
Gary had his Aleppo moment, and
Yeah.
well, Bill was telling people to vote for Hillary, and it just went downhill. So
Yeah.
that was the first experience, and I was like, okay, I'm done. And then I tried it again this year, and this happened again, and I'm just like, dang, like, come
Yeah.
on. But since January 1st, I've actually been excited to see the potential that we have. And it seems like people are actually looking at us now. I've seen unprecedented numbers of people in my life who have been Democrats or Republicans their whole lives leaving
Yeah.
the parties. And then, the Mises caucus is getting tons of people to get on board. And a
Yeah.
lot of people are upset about that. I think it's great. I mean, as long as
That's
they're
great.
joining the Libertarian Party, I don't care.
Yeah.
I'm actually optimistic. Are you?
Yeah, I'm optimistic. I keep sort of I have two mindsets, right? I have kind of the what's possible mindset, right? And I'm extremely optimistic about that. And then I have the what's kind of most likely to happen, and I'm still pretty damn optimistic about that. Josh Dial, the guy from Tiger King, and I were he got to come to town, and we got to have dinner and hang out and share some war stories from his campaign with Joe Exotic for Libertarian governor, right? And we both kind of shared this idea that on the low side, we need to understand this is a 100-year battle that we're in. We were a libertarian country when this thing was founded. If you obviously ignore the human rights violations of African Americans,
Right.
And slave ownership, right? Aside from that, there were some pretty decent, libertarian foundings, right? And I don't support that or condone that in any way. Nobody come at us for that. But then it took 200 years to get to, where we were with H. Bush or whoever the hell it was in 76. I don't remember, Nixon. And then it has escalated in the opposite direction of libertarianism, right? And so I'd say we're on a normal path. We are 300 years removed, at least 200 years removed from even being able to pretend that we have some sort of liberty, individual freedom focused country or society. So why do we believe that in 2 elections that we're going to be able to change the mindset of human beings? This is a generational war that we're in. And when you kind of swallow that pill that it's likely I'm never going to see a libertarian elected to a major office in my lifetime, then you go into the war knowing, okay, what my mission is no longer to win. My mission is to spread. And you can take little victories as they come. But I'm also extremely excited at what you're saying. We are getting an assistance from the state and the 2 parties because they are crumbling and destroying themselves because there are no consistent principles upon which they stand. Their entire logic is being against the other guy. And that's what really turned me off. And I think of it like a pendulum. And I was actually listening to Dave's podcast with Jesse Kelly the other day, and he talked about Trump might have been they for all the things they believed about Trump, he might have been stopping somebody far worse. And that's what I believe is that when I look back, man, Joe Biden is probably significantly worse in this progressive era than Barack Obama was, right? But I remember how, and it's not like it started with Trump. I remember the things they said, rightfully so, about George W. Bush. I remember, I was a Republican at the time. I remember watching Jon Stewart call him pure evil incarnate, right? And so this pendulum keeps, so the only response is, well, we need somebody stronger and more aggressive to fight the other guy. And that started out kind of here on the pendulum, but it continues to swing and escalate. And whoever the Republicans offer up is not going to be some middle ground moderate. It is going to be something crazy, scary, and extreme. And I think a lot of people are starting to feel that. They're starting to realize that we're not fighting for any principles. There's no core belief system among Republicans and Democrats at the moment. And so they're ripe for the picking to say, hey, if you believe in principle, here are the things we stand for and what we believe in. We have an opportunity to make a pitch. And when we make that pitch, we do need to take a moment and say, well, what's important to you? What matters to you? Let them tell us, and then show them how freedom kind of solves that issue for them. So yeah, I am incredibly optimistic that the opportunity exists right now because of those fractures in the two big parties, that we could take a giant step. But also, I will cling to the fact that this is a war for my grandchildren at this point. It is going to take a long, long time to shift this dependence on the government to solve every single problem to back to individuals coming together and solving these problems for ourselves.
Yeah, I agree. And hopefully we will see some change in our lifetime, because I'm actually pessimistic if we don't about what the future is going to be like, because some things can't last too many more generations the way they're going.
Yeah, no, I also look, I've got a little black pill, you know, the more, and don't get me wrong, being from Alabama helps me kind of understand that black pill a little bit, but there, even, you know, the multiple ethnicities that exist in the South have so little in common with the same types of ethnicities and class structures in Portland, Oregon, right? Like, those two societies are so far apart, and you look across the globe and you're like, where does this work? Where do this many people function together in a successful society? And it's two places, India and China, right? Religion and authoritarian rule. And so part of my black pill is that we have a population issue. And what I mean by that is 365 million people aren't supposed to be like-minded, where you can rule over 150 million with 151 million. And that's what we've got right now. And it's a scary proposition. So obviously my hope is, decentralization. But if it doesn't come, decentralization is going to come one way or another. We'll see how that goes. We'll go the way of Rome.
I share your fear there. Well, just give us the info on where we can follow you, and your Twitter or anywhere else. People can check out what you're doing.
Yeah. So at jtodd601 is my Twitter, and I want to be sure I get this one correct for the Carnegie. It is at LP_Carnegie. That's CARNEGIE. And give us a follow there. And we're still kind of in the infancy stages on that and exploring the FEC filing, etc. But that's our goal is to have, an economist and a person of the likes of Tony Robbins at some of our conventions, right? Why are we not focusing on developing who we are as an individual and improving that skill set. So it's our mission. Go follow me there, and we'll talk.
All right. Well, thank you for coming on.
Absolutely.
We'll see you again on Thursday with Dave Smith and David Fight. That's going to be a good show. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, looking forward to it. What I'm excited about with that is that we get to tell the story, and storytelling is probably the best way to, get points across. And so I'm really, really excited about it.
All right. Well, we'll see you then. Have a good one, Jeremy.
Awesome. Thanks, man.